Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. This time, we're going to be looking at the idea of acceptable good deeds from an Islamic perspective. And we're going to be focusing specifically on verses 103 to 105 of Surah Al-Kahf
Right.
and the commentary on those verses
Okay.
to better understand what makes a good deed, truly count.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating topic, because it really encourages us to look beyond just the action itself
Right.
and to consider like the motivations behind our action.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's interesting because what I've been reading is that sometimes even a deed that seems good can actually be meaningless if it doesn't have the right foundation. So what is that foundation? What is that key ingredient that makes an action an acceptable good deed?
Well, the foundation, according to these verses in Surah Al-Kahf and the commentary, is Iman,
Okay.
which is sincere faith.
Okay.
And, these verses actually describe people who strive and think they're doing good.
Right.
But ultimately, their actions are they hold no real weight.
Oh, wow.
They're almost like a mirage,
Mm-hmm.
And that's because they haven't truly embraced the signs of Allah
Okay.
and the reality of a day of judgment.
That's a powerful way to put it, that you're striving and putting in all this effort and then to find out that it was basically all for nothing.
Right.
So I'm still trying to wrap my head around how belief in Allah and his signs and the day of judgment all connect to a good deed being quote unquote acceptable or not.
It really comes down to the root of the action.
Okay.
When you truly acknowledge Allah
Right.
and his signs, which are all around us, and the fact that we will be held accountable on the day of judgment,
Yeah.
it really changes how you approach life.
Right.
This belief becomes the bedrock. It becomes the foundation upon which you build your actions.
Okay.
It mends your heart. It guides your behavior. And it really motivates you to seek Allah's pleasure in all circumstances, whether you're experiencing joy or facing hardship.
So it becomes less about, doing things for worldly rewards or recognition.
Yes.
And more about aligning yourself with a higher purpose.
Exactly.
About pleasing Allah.
Exactly. And, the source material really highlights
Yeah.
the importance of intention and how true faith should naturally lead us to evaluate our actions and really try to align them with the desire to please Allah.
Okay.
It's like planting a seed. If the soil is fertile and the roots are strong,
Right.
the plant's going to thrive.
Yeah.
But if the foundation is weak, even if you put in all the effort,
Right.
the plant will eventually wither away.
I like that. So instead of the house on sand, we're picturing a tree with deep roots.
Right.
But how do we make sure that our actions are really rooted in that desire to please Allah? I mean, it's so easy to get, distracted and caught up in the dunya and,
Right. It's a continuous process.
Yeah.
A journey of self-reflection and refinement.
Right.
And you bring up a very important point because even within Islamic thought,
Okay.
there are actually different schools of thought on the exact relationship between actions and intentions.
Really? I thought it was pretty straightforward. Good intention and you're good to go.
Well, it's a little more nuanced than that.
Okay.
For instance, some scholars argue that the intention is paramount.
Okay.
Even if the action isn't perfect, if you have that sincere intention to please Allah, it elevates it.
Okay.
But others emphasize that both the intention and the action itself
Right.
have to be in accordance with Islamic teachings for it to be truly acceptable.
So it's not just a black and white issue.
No, it's not.
There's actually room for debate and different perspectives, even within this concept of what makes a good deed acceptable.
Exactly. And that's what makes exploring these concepts so fascinating.
Yeah.
It challenges us to go beyond the surface level and really delve into the wisdom and guidance that's offered within the Islamic tradition.
I'm starting to rethink some of my assumptions here. I'm already seeing there's a lot more depth to this idea of acceptable good deeds.
Right. And we've only just scratched the surface.
Oh, wow.
We haven't even touched on this really interesting point
Okay.
that the commentary brings up about the paradox of good deeds without faith
Okay.
and what that means for all of us, regardless of our backgrounds.
Okay. Now you've really piqued my interest. I definitely want to dive into that next.
Okay, sounds good. It's so interesting how the commentary brings up this seeming, contradiction. It acknowledges that people of all backgrounds can and do, engage in acts of kindness and charity.
Right.
And actually, it even points out that sometimes,
Yeah.
those who don't identify as Muslim may even outwardly surpass some Muslims
Wow.
when it comes to these actions.
That's a pretty bold statement.
Yeah.
So does that mean that their good deeds are like meaningless then? Just because they don't have that same foundation of faith that we were talking about?
Well, it's not about minimizing the impact of their actions in this world. You
Right.
know, I mean, their actions can definitely benefit others
Right.
and contribute to positive change.
Yeah.
But what the source material suggests is that without that underlying belief in Allah as the ultimate source of goodness
Okay.
and a desire to please Him specifically,
Yeah.
those actions don't necessarily carry the same weight in the hereafter.
I see. So it's like those good deeds are kind of detached from that deeper spiritual connection to Allah.
Exactly.
So they don't like accumulate those same spiritual rewards.
Precisely. And you know, this applies to everyone. It's not just limited to those outside of Islam.
Okay.
Because even for someone who identifies as Muslim,
Yeah.
if their actions are like primarily driven by a desire for recognition or personal gain,
Right.
or even like a sense of moral superiority, the source material is very clear
Yeah.
that those deeds may not be accepted.
Wow. So intentions really do matter. It's
Yeah.
not enough to just go through the motions of doing good. It really has to come from that place of sincere faith
Right.
and a desire to please Allah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, it's like if you have this like beautifully decorated cake,
Okay.
it might look amazing from the outside,
Right.
but if the ingredients are spoiled,
Yeah.
it won't be very enjoyable to eat.
That's a good analogy. Oh, wait. So how can we like protect ourselves from those spoiled ingredients? You know, in our own actions, how can we like make sure that our intentions remain pure?
That's where the concept of dua comes in.
Okay.
You know, it's the act of humbly supplicating to Allah,
Right.
acknowledging our own limitations, and asking for His guidance and acceptance.
So it's not enough to like just have that good intention at the beginning.
Right.
We need to be constantly like checking in with ourselves and seeking Allah's help to like keep our actions and our hearts aligned.
You got it. You know, it's like a marathon runner.
Okay.
They might have the best training plan and the strongest determination,
Right.
but they still rely on those water stations along the way
Yeah.
to stay hydrated and keep going. You know, dua is like that spiritual sustenance.
Okay.
For our souls, it helps us stay on course.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
It makes it much more relatable.
Yep.
So it's not just about the destination, but
Yeah.
like the whole journey and making sure we're replenishing ourselves spiritually
Exactly.
along the way.
And you know, there's another powerful aspect of dua that I think is really worth highlighting.
Okay.
It's about acknowledging that we're human, that we make mistakes.
Yeah, we're not perfect.
We get distracted, we forget things.
Right.
You know, dua allows us to recognize that need for Allah's mercy and forgiveness.
Yeah.
It's like saying, God, I'm trying my best, but I know I'm not perfect. Please accept my efforts and protect them from being wasted.
Yeah. And that's a beautiful way to put it. You know, it takes the pressure off of trying to be perfect all the time.
Exactly.
And it makes it more about just that continuous effort
Right.
to improve and to try to align ourselves with our faith.
Exactly. You know, it's about progress, not perfection.
Right.
And that progress is really tied to knowledge. The more we learn about our faith,
Yeah.
the better equipped we are
Right.
to really understand these nuances of acceptable good deeds.
Right.
And to refine our intentions.
Yeah, I agree. I think knowledge empowers us to make those like more informed choices and to really act with like a deeper understanding of our purpose.
Exactly.
But I mean, there's so much information out there. It
Yeah.
can feel kind of overwhelming. Like, where do we even begin?
That's a great question. And it's one that I think we can definitely address later on.
Okay.
But before we move on, I think it's important to remember
Okay.
that even with the best intentions and the most sincere dua, our deeds are ultimately judged by Allah alone.
Yeah, that is, that's definitely a humbling reminder.
It is, it reminds us that we're not in control of the outcome.
Right.
We can only control our efforts.
Right.
And that's where surrendering to Allah's will comes into play. We do our part. We strive for excellence in our intentions and our actions, and then we leave the rest to Him.
This whole conversation has really been eye-opening for me, you know? It's made me realize that this concept of acceptable good deeds is so much more like complex in nuance than I initially thought.
Yeah, it's a lifelong journey of learning and reflection and refinement.
And the beautiful thing is that it sounds like there's always room for growth,
Absolutely. Oh,
you know? So for someone who's listening to this right now and feeling inspired to really like examine their own actions and motivations, where would you suggest they start?
Well, I would say start with small, consistent steps.
Oh.
Choose one action that you do regularly. Maybe it's giving charity or helping a neighbor or even just speaking kindly to others.
Right.
And before you do it, just take a moment to pause.
Okay.
And reflect on your intention. Are you doing it sincerely for Allah's pleasure?
Yeah.
Or are there other motivations kind of mixed in there?
That's a really good, like, practical tip to really bring that mindfulness to even those small actions.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to make dua. Specifically for that action,
Right.
Ask Allah to purify your intention.
Okay.
And to accept your deed. You might be surprised at how that one small act can really transform how you approach your daily life.
This has been such a great conversation. I feel like we've unpacked so much,
We have.
We talked about the importance of Iman as that foundation for acceptable good deeds.
Right.
We explored the role of intention, and we even delved into like the power of dua and how that helps keep our actions, aligned with our faith.
Exactly.
But before we wrap up, I want to make sure that we leave our listeners with a clear takeaway. So like, what's the one key message that you really hope they'll carry with them from this deep dive?
I would say that the pursuit of acceptable good deeds is not about achieving perfection.
Right.
But it's about striving for excellence
Oh.
in all that we do, both inwardly and outwardly. It's about that continuous journey of aligning our hearts and our minds and our actions with the pleasure of Allah.
I love that. That's beautifully said.
Thank you.
And it sounds like it's a journey that, anyone can embark on.
Absolutely.
Regardless of where they are.
Wherever you are in your journey.
In their spiritual understanding.
You can always strive for this.
And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this journey of exploration.
Yes, thank you.
We really hope that you've gained some valuable insights into this concept of acceptable good deeds. Knowledge is a powerful tool.
It is.
And the more we learn, the better equipped we are to live a life that is both meaningful and pleasing to Allah.
Absolutely.
So until next time, keep seeking, keep reflecting.
Yes.
And keep striving for excellence in all that you do.
Jazakallahu khairan.
Wa antum fajazakallahu khairan.